And so let me show you the issue. Right here, I have a simple Apex class. And all it does is you pass in a destination, a URL, and it makes the call out to that URL. And all it's doing is saying if we get a 200 response code back, return true. Otherwise, anything else is false. And I do have a little debug statement here, so we could take a look at the debug logs later. By the way, all the code you're going to see here, there's a link in the description to download it and play with it in your own sandboxes. So we're going to go to example.com. And you can see here, this is the standard page. I get a code 200. And if I go to, let's say, some nonsense like this here, a page that doesn't really exist, I get a 404, standard error. So it's very simple, very easy. So I have a unit test. And my unit test does something very simple. It calls my class, calls my method, passes in example.com. And so here's the problem. Apex does not support this, where it will not, in a unit test, actually make a call out to an outside website. And what it really does is it throws an error like this. Methods defined do not support web callouts. So as you can see, that's a big problem because there's nothing wrong with my code. This is just the nature of Apex. And so now people would sit there and say, okay, what do we do about this? How do we test this? Because we got a the test fails and we can't have that. So what some people will do at this point is one option is just to delete the unit test completely and say, all right, we're not testing this code at all. That's not the best option in the world. Here's something some people might do. They might say, all right, if this is a running test, let's just return true. Let's save. And so, this is also not a great way of going about things. And it works. Technically it works. You see, we got a pass now. Our unit test here, hey, look, we got green, it passes. But if we look at our code coverage, look at all this untested code. And so, I can make logic errors down here. I can do all sorts of weird stuff and never have it, never have it verified again. Plus, we only got 25% coverage instead of 100% or even 75%. So this will never even make it out to prod. So what can we do? Well, we could use the mock, the mock class to figure out what the response should be and let the code deal with it. I'll show you how that works. First, here's the mock class. I give it any name I want, so I called it mock, verify status, good response. This is a key here, implements HTTP callout mock. And then all you do is you have this one method in here, and you just generate up a response. So I said this is the headers of the response, what I would expect to come back from the website. There's the body of the message, there's the response code, 200, and you return it, and this is it. And then in your unit test, this line here, set mock, all you do is before the callout occurs, before you exercise the part of the code that actually makes the callout, you just call this. HTTP callout mock.class, whatever, comma, and the name of my new class here. So you see new, this class name. And that's it. And then everything else from that point forward will work just fine. And your code will basically pretend to be calling out, and it's going to return back, where you would normally get a call out. You see, I got a pass. I'm going to go back here. And let's take a look at the good response here. Oh, let's get rid of that nonsense and let's actually run this and let's actually test something. I'm going to save it and rerun it. And so whatever was in this mock response, whatever HTTP response I was running in there or returned, that's what my callout is going to see. So now we have it here. And now you can see that here's where the callout's made. You can see it got the 200, or it returned true, and we're good. So now we got stuff. Now, I do have this other condition here for, 400 errors. Well, what do we do there? Well, in here, I can only really have one response. So, initial thoughts was, okay, I'll create another class for my negative case scenarios. And so here's my negative, and I'm going to return a 404. And if I wanted to, if I didn't need the body here, as an HTML file, if I wanted it as a JSON, we could return a JSON instead, whatever. And this works as well. I could have my bad response. I could verify with my asserts that I get the error condition. Fine. But, do you really want to have for every, what if we didn't have to do two statuses here? What if we had a whole tree of things and we had like 8, 9, 10 different responses we wanted to test? This could get really tedious to have all these different things in all these different places. So the good news is you don't have to go down that path. You could do it all in one class. So let's get to this here. And this is the class that when you go to do this in your environment, this is the way you probably want to actually do it. Have everything in one spot to make it a little bit easier. And so a little bit, and I'm gonna admit a little bit of this stuff I grabbed from Trailhead, as an example of how to do things. But you can see here, this is the constructor. See, the class name is the same. There's the constructor, and I pass in a string. And I say, if the string is one thing, I call this method. If the string is another thing, I call this other method. And this is setting the values. So setting the code, the content type, the body, all that stuff. I even have in here an extra special. I overloaded this constructor to have all these other things that just reflect back whatever I pass to it. So in theory, this would be the only method I need, and my unit test, each unit test could pass in all of these values themselves. And I don't have to do this initial config stuff here. But I find that a little inconvenient when you have a whole bunch of unit tests. I just want to have, I want to have kind of a unified spot to put these things in. If I know that my 404s always look the same way, I don't want to have to recreate them in every single unit test I run. That's just tedious. And so let me go back to my test here. And so here is my test method, expecting the good response. And so you can see here's the class, where I say, all right, give me a new instance of that class. I'm passing in the value good. And then that's a variable. So I put that in my mock. And then it runs a status test. And you can see here is the bad response. So it's virtually copy and paste. There's the variable, says the mock, put it in here. And if I wanted to test a complete, here's one I did of I call it the reflector class, where it's just giving back whatever I pass in. So you can see here, I create a new one where it's a 500 error, where I'm just like, all right, whatever. I'm just going to make stuff up inside my unit test here. And so if I run these, so I'm going to run all of these. And they all pass. And if I go to my code, and if I look at my overall, you can see here, we now have 100% test coverage. And this is all valid values, and this is valid testing, because like, let's say someone comes around later and screws up and they delete this here. What's going to happen, or maybe they change that to that, so let's say they do all sorts of weird stuff. Now I have a regression suite because I have full test coverage, and I can see, oh, someone broke something, This all exists. We should have got a true and we got a false. And so we could, do a full regression on our callouts and have the 100% code coverage, which is wonderful because if you have 100% coverage, you're never going to have a deployment issue with that code coverage limit. So to get this stuff, to get all these this code, the links down below, you go to syracusedevelopers.com/presentation/callouts, and I have a zip file right here, which has all this stuff, which you could also easily deploy using SFDX into your sandbox or your Trailhead playgrounds. And while you're visiting the site, I hope that I could see you maybe at the next Syracuse Developers Community Group. Hopefully next year, 2021, all our meetups are going to be virtual. We talk about a whole bunch of stuff, whether you're a developer or an admin or an admin developer. Feel free to join us next time you can. And so happy coding and good luck on getting 100%.